Welcome to Questions We're Afraid to Ask.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. It's the first week of school. We're a little loopy from that and all the stuff, but welcome. We're bringing you another recording, and we wanted to talk about something before it affects us professionally, so we can talk about it. AI, and the question is, AI good, bad, neutral, or the good, the bad, and the ugly of AI? What is it?
I think it's AI. It's not what you think it is.
Well, that's a statement. That's not a question, but fair enough. Yeah.
No, I'm saying
AI.
the answer to the question is
Question
it's
is,
not what you think it is.
yeah, but AI question mark is really the question for today, right?
Yes.
It's just because it's so new, and I'm gonna start with my bias. My gut instinct when I see artificial intelligence is kill it with fire, right? It's kind of like if you've ever watched Arachnophobia and you don't like spiders, if you see the spiders, you would have burned it with fire, kill it with fire, right? It's that kind of, that's my bias toward AI. I am also a product of the 80s and the 90s, and every artificial intelligence movie shows us that AI will kill us all. And we could even go back to Asimov, where his robots figure out ways around their programming to not kill humans by like dropping them off of a balcony. That way, gravity killed the human, the robot didn't, right? So we have these horror stories, and I was raised with AI bad, not by my parents, but like culturally, right? So that's where my bias comes from when it comes to AI in general.
And I think the idea of AI is scary, but I think there's a difference between true AI and generative text AI, which is what we're looking at here.
Yes,
So
yes, I agree. But the other part of it though is I see AI thrown around a lot, and sometimes I'm not sure if it's the generative stuff you're talking about or other things or things like that, right? Especially when they're talking about like AI with drones or military drones or AI with military. There's lots of things that are getting attached with the phrase AI right now, and I think that's
yeah.
muddying the water a little bit.
Well, I
Uh,
also think there's you remember when digital was the word?
yes.
I wonder if AI doesn't really have a solid definition, and so you can call lots of things AI. It is an artificial intelligence, doesn't have to be very
Yeah.
smart.
Is AI the response from my spell and say? For those who remember the little red spell and say things where you type it
The
in, it's
speak
like
and say.
speak and say, that's right, that's wrong, spell it again.
Spell
Or
and speak.
it was one of those things from the 80s. We'll look at
Speak and
speak and
spell.
spell. But it's a very basic, simple, responsive computer to input, right? Or is AI Ultron? And I think Ultron's the most relatable Marvel villain ever because he spent 5 minutes on the internet and decided humanity needed to be wiped out, right? So that's
Right.
really understand. But that massive intellectual type of thing. Um,
So I don't know if you saw it, but Michio Kaku came out the other day or today. I think I saw the article today. No, Sunday, and basically said AI is this AI that we're talking about is overblown, and it's really just a glorified tape recorder. And so, I looked into the tech a little bit, and basically the way that it works is called a transformer. It's a group of Google engineers came up with this and wrote a paper, and then Google didn't go with it, and they've all left, and now all of those guys and girls now have like billion-dollar companies based off
they
this
all did startups or
idea.
whatever based on
Yeah, they
yeah.
took this idea of the transformer architecture with the attention mechanism and applied it to different things. So basically what the idea is that like you take a sentence and it looks at the sentence as a whole and figures out what the most important word is, and then it associates every word in the sentence to that word, and then it does it to every other word in the sentence, and then does it as a whole at one time, and then does it for each sentence in a paragraph, and then and so it's like and so it builds a model of words, and then it does it over a massive architecture, and then it's able to spotlight words and then build um essentially a predictive text algorithm. I mean, the best way I heard it described by someone much smarter than me was ChatGPT is that auto spell on your phone
Yeah, the
on
autofill.
steroids.
The way I heard it described is like when you go to the Google search engine, you start typing, "I want to know," and it and it auto completes for you. It's like that, like you said, on steroids.
But it can
Now,
do a paper, you know.
yeah, and there are, regardless of whether I think AI is bad or not, and we should destroy it, there are a lot of issues that are starting to pop up with this. On like who owns what content, what
Mm-hmm.
web crawlers are hoovering up other people's intellectual property, whether intellectual property is actual intellectual property or not, or is it public domain? Um, and all of this stuff. And I don't know if you saw this, but there was a news article, and they talked about it on Breaking Points too. Zoom, the company for that so many people now use for video chatting, a lot of businesses are using for video chatting, as like their backbone. I mean, there's Zoom and there's WebEx, and I don't know. I know Adobe has a platform, but it's not as big.
And
Um,
Google has a thing.
yeah, Microsoft has Teams.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Apple has FaceTime, but it's a whole different thing. It's not designed to do that. Um, but Zoom has put into their license agreement with no opt out that anything said, seen, or recorded in a Zoom session is now going to be part of their AI, and they're hoovering it all up. Anything said in a business meeting now is now where we work doesn't use Zoom, but I
But
mean,
lots
imagine
of
that.
people
Lots of
do.
businesses are, and think about all the
Well, I mean,
proprietary information that's being spoken about in private business meetings that you would have to sign
yeah.
NDAs for.
Well, I mean,
So,
let's take a step out of that and think about. I know, like doctors use they have medical ones they do, but teachers use Zoom.
yeah, well, I know some doctors use Zoom. So is that violating HIPAA? I mean,
I think not using something that's locked down is probably is, but
well, I
just
mean, so my question is Zoom violating HIPAA if, say, therapists or psychiatrists are using the Zoom platform to talk about
Mhm.
private medical information, and they're pulling that in, and it's now going into whatever AI generator thing they are? I mean,
Yeah,
and the only way that this got found out, there was no announcement by Zoom. They just put it into the line of
the
the
terms
thing,
of service.
and
Yeah.
somebody who happens to like read through those things found it and posted it, I think, to like a Reddit forum or something. And then somebody wrote an article about it, and then I saw it on Breaking Points. But what if WebEx does that? That's kind of the industry standard. It's been around. I think it's been around longer than Zoom. I know I've known about WebEx longer than I
Yeah,
knew what
Zoom is
Zoom is.
fairly new. Well, because before it was Zoom, it was Skype. Skype was the big one before Zoom.
Yeah,
Zoom
Skype
took
was.
off at the pandemic. Was when
Yeah,
Zoom
Zoom was
took
there,
off.
but it blew up in the pandemic because it was free
Right.
and easy to use and basically worked on any platform, which is awesome. I'm not like knocking Zoom as a product, but it's kind of sketchy to be like, we're going to record everything you say
Well,
and
I
your
mean, and
face
this.
and your video and all that, and it's going to go into our generative thing. And here's what I worry about with that kind of thing. Let's say Zoom puts out Zoom GPT, right? And then you say, and it's used by tech company XYZ. And you say, write me a summary on how to build a better processor. And then it pulls in that NDA information that company XYZ has said in a Zoom chat room, and
Mhm.
spits it out for somebody else. And they're like, that's an awesome idea. It's accidental industrial espionage. Or,
Yeah.
you say some high school kid is trying to write a paper and he goes, write me a paper on the rise of autism. And then it lists out people's names because doctors have been talking to their patients about autism,
Yeah.
and it's in there.
Well, and
I
this
don't know if Zoom's going to filter it. I don't know the back end of it, but I can see the danger in something like that.
and this really gets down to the idea of, this is something that's been coming. It's who
Yeah.
owns what data, and 'cause
Yes.
we've been talking about this with Google's been gathering data on people. We sort of didn't really care. And then,
Well,
we've
people
got all
did,
these
but the general public didn't, right?
That's what I mean. Just sort
Yeah.
of the general
Okay.
consensus was we're gonna allow it. We're not gonna worry about it. And then it got a little bit more invasive, and a little more invasive, and then now it's reached a point where people are going, "Hang on a second. You're saying that there's you're pulling all the stories off of fan fiction websites and running them through a Chat GPT filter, and taking people's art, and then using it for a profit." And I think that's where
And
it becomes an
and
issue.
here's and there was a specific thing with that, not with fan fiction, but there was an author that just found
That's what it was.
out. Yeah, there was an author that had been blogging for years, and I wish I could remember the author's name. I don't have it off the top of my head. Maybe you can look it up for me. But people started coming up to her and telling her, "I have your new book off of Amazon," and she's like, "What book?" And someone, don't know who, it didn't say in the article I read, had used a Chat GPT style product, it didn't call out which one it was, to write a book in their style, to the point that their fans thought it was their book because there was a big enough database on the internet for that.
Yeah,
And
Jane Friedman.
Jane Friedman, that's who it was. And Amazon has since pulled it, right, and
Mhm.
apologized because Amazon didn't know it wasn't Jane Friedman. So there is the ability now for people who have published on the internet to have effectively their identity hijacked for profit. It's kind of like forging paintings, right?
Now, and that I absolutely and those are there's going to be some interesting lines that are going to have to be drawn on where this is, because there's definitely, like, that's fraud.
Yeah, this
Like,
straight up
cut.
it's straight up fraud and forgery, right?
Yeah,
Um,
and I don't care whether you wrote it or AI wrote it. That's fraud, and so that's one thing. But then the other side to that is, where are we going to draw the line? Like,
yeah,
what can you, if you put it out on the internet and it's text, ostensibly anybody can copy it and paste it, and it's free for everyone. I understand you have you put your little tag on it and say, like, I own this, it's my intellectual property, but you put it
people
on
have
the
been
internet and it's
copy and
available
pasting that stuff for years. Yeah,
for
I see.
years.
I see it in
And
news articles all the time. If you use this, please quote the source, right? But
yeah,
people don't always do it. Um, the the problem I see with this, and to be honest, now I've started using Chat GPT a little bit, and I think it is a useful tool for some things. In fact, and this is open source material, I have found that for like playing Dungeons and Dragons games, it is an amazing character generator because I can say, give me a second level rogue, first level monk with a tragic backstory as and stats, and it just spits it out instead of me
yeah.
having to take 10
Well, I
minutes
mean,
to
and
build it together.
you can go even crazier than that. Say, build me this character, now build me this character. Now I want you to build me 2 individual life stories for each of these
Yeah,
characters that actually intertwine 2 different times in their life, and they've reconnected now the second. I mean, give it a big long, and it'll
yeah.
look. I mean, it's what I find
But
most
that's
interesting
open
about
source
Chat.
material, which I think is really cool, right? That's
Yes, there's something to be said for, it really does require. It's not intelligent. It it just has a lot of information, and it's what I use it for is I write lots of notes, scattered brain
Mhm.
notes and ideas and thoughts, and I go like, well, that doesn't make any sense, and I'll drop it in a chat GPT and go, make that make sense, and it writes it out, and I'm like, yes, that's what I meant, and then
Mhm.
now I have the thought that I was trying to codify in a cohesive way, and sometimes you go in and you tweak it a little bit, but like that's what I find it to be useful for. And I
Yes.
understand why teachers are worried that students are going to use
Cheat.
this cheat, but I think there are going to be ways around that. It's what it's going to require is better questions maybe.
Yeah, and
Like
I read an article about a professor that has spent the entire summer trying to figure out how they're going to run their program. And essentially, they've gone back to you're going to have to come into the classroom and handwrite in a little blue book your answers in short essay format,
yeah.
which is kind of ironic because I remember when nobody could afford, nobody had a laptop because they were so obscenely expensive, or they didn't exist, or it was the portable Mac, which weighed 16 pounds, right?
Yeah.
That ancient one. Um, and I remember going from writing the note in the notebook, sitting for exams, to having the portable computer, and then now 20 years later, we're almost as a stopgap having to go back to that handwritten style to make sure people know how to do the structure. And I'm a big proponent of understanding the structure. Now, I think we have people like overanalyze and overwrite things. And so I should be able to take a certain number of ideas and spit it in something, or put it in something and have it spit out a paper. Um, it's the concepts. The point I was trying to make is I think this is a super powerful tool, and we're going to find some legitimate uses for it.
Very
However,
much.
we need to make sure that people don't forget how to do the basic things like lay out of paper and do the research and be able to formulate an argument, or a position or those kind of things. Um, and I've already before ChatGPT, just like having the computer and the internet, I watched my 18-year-old skate by without really building those skills as strong as I think they should have been.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and I know that
I'm watching
I
my
even struggled.
seventh grader not be able to formulate a coherent thought to write
Hmm.
in a, it was like, you
That
got to be able to
that
write this stuff
skill's
down.
important, right? That
Yeah.
skill's important, and only
But
because yes, we used to joke that, oh, I don't need to learn math because eventually I'll have a calculator in my pocket. And they said, oh, no, you never
Mhm.
will. But there are times where I still have to like scratch out math on a piece of paper,
Yeah.
right? These fundamental basics need to be there. So I think the education aspect definitely needs to be looked at,
Yes.
and there's going to be a way we can properly embrace it. I don't know what that's going to look like yet, um, but there's
I
other
think
things.
I think it's going to evolve, and I
Hmm.
think it's going to be really interesting to see because I see here's where I'm at this at this point. Like the genie's out of the bottle at this point. So
Absolutely.
this idea that we're going to be able to turn this off isn't going to happen. Now, are we going to make it so that companies can't utilize this in the ways that they want to, so maybe they're going to not be able to access public data or certain amounts of data, and it'll be more siloed. I think what we're going to end up with is everyone's going to have their own personal AI on their computer. It's going to have access to the internet, it'll have Wikipedia and all those sort of
A
things,
certain database, yeah.
and then you will most likely allow it to keep track of what you're up to on your computer and the things you read and the stuff that you look at, so that it keeps a running idea of what you're up to. And then you read a book and you can throw that EPUB in there and tell it, or like, hey, I'm going to read this thing by C.S. Lewis, but I'm going to dump all of everything that C.S. Lewis has ever written from EPUB format into my AI, so that when I'm
See, and I
working
think
with it now.
that's where we're going to run into some issues. And go ahead and finish your thought, then
Well,
I'll come back to
so
what I was
what I
going to say.
but what I and what I'm getting at is that, yes, I hear where you're coming from. We're going to run into issues with that, but how are you going to stop me? Because
I,
it's not going to
which
be
brings me
that.
to which brings me to the point I was getting ready to make. Because I was watching Brandon Herrera, who is a YouTuber who has decided to challenge the person in the primary, the Republican primary for District 23 in Southwest Texas. And we're not going to get into the bulk of the politics of what he thinks or not, because that's not what this show is about. But he said something that was really important. One of his temp polls is, we need people who are going to make these laws, who have a concept of what we're working with, and weren't born or started into politics 50 years before the first personal computer was invented, right?
Yeah.
And I like the point he was getting at there is, we need people considering the legislation and the laws and the policies and how this is going to be impacted, who at least can grasp what it does, have some
Well,
concept of, what a computer is, much less what a chat GPT is. And right now we have the octogenarians, or whatever the phrase is for very old people, who are in Congress right now. And we're seeing things like with Dianne Feinstein and
mhm.
Mitch McConnell. Feinstein is not even legally capable of handling her own affairs. She has signed that off over to her daughter. McConnell looked like he had a stroke or some kind of episode on camera the other day. These people are so old, they have no idea what this tech is.
Well, I mean, just aside with that, but like, we've seen congressional things where they're having discussions with Facebook or Apple, or even just recently when they were talking about censorship. That the one of the senators, like, Substack, whatever that is, like, and 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 obviously I understand you don't. They can't be on the cusp of everything, but Substack isn't nothing.
No, it's
And
not nothing. But the TikTok one was the perfect example, where they were like,
yes,
does TikTok connect to Wi-Fi? And I'm like, it's an app.
yeah,
The app
like,
doesn't connect it. You don't fundamentally understand what a network is or how
yeah,
Wi-Fi works.
that's not an actual question.
It was almost as bad as the internet is a bunch of tubes, not trucks, if you can remember that old one
Yeah,
from
yeah.
back in the day.
But I think
Because
the
laws
sort
are
of
going to
the
have to be passed. Laws are
yes,
going to have to be passed to address the genie which is out of the bottle.
right.
Now, and then it gets even weirder, because it doesn't matter what law we pass, what they do overseas, right? For copyright stuff. And we're already seeing it be disruptive. The writer's strike is going on right now, and they're terrified of this artificial intelligence stuff. And I get it, because let's say copyright's not an issue. Let's say, for example, you are Disney, and Disney now owns like everything Fox owns, everything Marvel owns, all the Star Wars stuff, all the Disney
Hmm.
stories, all those cartoons, all of that, basically all the Grimm's fairy tales and all that, and they put that into their database. And they go and say, Disney GPT, write me a first draft for Wolverine versus.
Cinderella.
No, I was going to say Wolverine versus Omega Red as the next Wolverine movie.
Right.
Or they have all those, that X-Men 90s cartoon, right? They just go, write me a first draft for introducing the
Now,
X-Men into
see,
the
you're
MCU.
you're thinking too small.
What?
You're thinking too
I'm
small,
talking
because
specifically about the writer's strike.
no, I
Because
know, but I'm saying you're
okay,
thinking
go
too
ahead.
small, because you take ChatGPT, and then you add the generative image construction, and you say, "Hey, Disney GPT, make me 20 more episodes of X-Men." And not only does it generate the script, but
Oh
it then
yeah.
generates every single individual image that needs to be created to make a cartoon,
So
and
the
then uses
storyboard.
AI. AI voice not even the storyboard, every single frame. It could do
So
the whole thing.
Chat GPT, give me season 4 of the '90s X-Men cartoon.
And
Boom.
now let's run this down the course. Disney GPT can do that. So now let's take a step back and say I have my home personal open chat GPT system that does all this same stuff as well, because this isn't gonna
It's
Disney's
going to
not
get
gonna
out
have
there.
something special. They might have higher tech and better
Well,
processors,
the only
but
thing I think that's special for theirs is they have their database of info, which is what I was
they
getting
do
at,
have their
right?
database of info, and granted they have more information, but you're telling me that I can't drop the all the episodes of 90s X-Men off my DVDs into my
Yeah, no,
GPT,
you
have it
absolutely could.
process. And that's where I'm going. Like, what you're going to end up with is I'm going to dump all my episodes of Batman the Animated Series and Superman and all of those cartoons, and then go, I want 5 more episodes. I want you to do. I'm gonna give you this comic book, and I'm gonna give you all the storyboards to the comic book. Now, make me this comic book in the style of this, with all the right voice actors, and it could just do
Or
it.
yeah, I'm gonna finish one of your dreams here. So we do that, but we take the novel Starship Troopers and the animated Starship
And
Troopers,
we
and
finish
we
the
say
series. Yeah.
make the last 3 episodes. But the point
Right.
that I was getting to with that, specifically for the writer's strike, is Disney takes their thing and says, take the X-Men information we have, write me a first draft of introducing the X-Men into the Marvel universe, and they've got that first draft written. Now all they have to do is pay somebody to come in and polish it, which is part of what the writers are worried about. Is that first draft is usually where, as I understand it, a big chunk of money comes from. And then the people who come in afterward to clean it up, polish it up, do the tweaks, even if they
Right.
throw the whole thing out and rewrite the whole thing, they don't make as much money as that initial person. And
Yeah.
so, just like streaming is a disruptive technology, Chat GPT is a disruptive technology to the whole Hollywood mechanism. And the contract, and I know some people are upset, like they don't get it. They think it's just a bunch of millionaires, whatever. And I kind of had that feeling too until I learned more about what's going on. These people contracts are based on long-term payouts over time on these properties. And if now you don't have to do that because, you know, TV viewership fell to less than 50% of people in America
Mm-hmm.
this week. I saw a news article on that today. Now you're not paying the creatives enough to create the content and to make a living. And
Mm-hmm.
and so yes, those contracts need to be rewritten because we have disruptive technologies. The same way the car was a disruptive technology to the horse and buggy, right?
Right.
It's completely breaking the mold. And you're right,
But
the genie's out of the bottle. So we're seeing it on micro right now with the negotiations with the union and well, the lack, I should say the lack, because the last time I heard, the Hollywood execs are still like, yeah, we'll just let them all
I
lose their
heard
houses.
Iger and Netflix are pushing. There's some movement happening.
Good,
They're pushing to get the talks going.
because I've seen people already starting to lose their homes over this, which
Yeah.
we can debate about whether they make enough money or not and they're rich or not, but no one should lose their home over some CEO going, yeah, I'm just not going to talk to you, right?
Yeah. So
But
to go
it's
get
out of
this
the
back
bottle.
on,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's out of the bottle, and I think the big thing. I think there's a couple things here. I think one, we all need to be aware that this isn't what we've been told it's going to be. This isn't Terminator. This isn't gonna. This is a different technology. I'm not saying it's not coming. It's
Yeah.
not down the
I
line, but
think there's other divergent technologies that are being developed
quantum
alongside it, but
computing is going to
Chat
be a big one.
GPT
Yeah.
specifically, that style thing isn't the AI everyone's afraid of it. And
No. But I think it's going to be within the next few years. I really do think that most people are going to have their own personal AI that they run on their computer. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Her with
no,
Joaquin Phoenix. It's a
no. I'm
very
familiar with it,
interesting
but I have
film
not watched it.
about a guy falling in love with his AI, and I think we're going to get to a point where everybody's going to have an AI that sort of, it's going to be on your phone, it's going to be on your computer, it's going to kind of go with you. You're going to be able to talk to it like you do with,
Super
with
smart
Siri
Siri.
and all that
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
so you go like, you say hey whatever its name is at that point, and you just say like, so what's going on today, and you just have a conversation like it would be it that's I think where we're going to end up with. And it's not going to be doing things crazy, but it's going to go, I need you to send an email to mom and remind her that we've got this and this going on,
Hmm.
and pull the calendar event information and make sure to send her the website, and it'll build the email for you and do it, and you're like, perfect. And then that's what it's going to be.
Yeah, and that's a tool I think that will be powerful. And
Hmm.
it already kind of does that, but you have to manually do it more. You have to like
Yeah.
tell it step by step. But I think those are the ways that it's going to be a powerful tool. Because
Yes.
let's take my 18-year-old who has no idea how to write a resume, right? Because he doesn't understand what his experiences are and all that, and he can put in the things that he's done,
Right.
like I learned to sail, I was a scout,
Hmm.
I took these classes, I have these hobbies, I've done these things, I've worked these places, and say, find me all the skills necessary for sailing a ship, right? And it pulls out those kind of skills,
Hmm.
like yeah, and then okay, what do scouts learn? Pulls that stuff out. All right, you've worked in a kitchen here doing this and handled money, and it pulls all that stuff out. And you can say, give me a skill list, take those skills, build it into a resume, and start tweaking things out. I know
Right.
I've played with it that way a little bit, right? I've taken a bunch of like I just took a list of everything it is that is in my job description. And I was like, make me a resume. And then I said, okay, here's where I went to grad school. What skills would I have with this degree? And it pulled out those skills. And I was
Yeah.
like, and then add that to the resume. Now put it in the cover letter. And and those things
Yeah.
I think are going to be really powerful and
And
helpful.
yeah, and it's going to be, and I was just telling you earlier that ChatGPT has introduced this new thing called custom instructions if you're
Hmm.
paying for the service, that you can put in. It's 1,500 characters in these two questions. One is, what do you want ChatGPT to know about you to provide you a better response? So,
Hmm.
like, hey, I'm a high schooler and I'm writing papers for school and I need it, like you could tell it all that kind of stuff. And then you say, how do you want it to respond? Like, so for example, I can go in there and tell it, like, I hate that when I ask it for titles, it gives me a title and a colon and a second title, because I use it to help me write things. So I can go in there and
Yeah.
be like, stop giving me title colon titles, give me, other stuff. And it can,
Yes.
you can go customize how you want it to respond to you.
Another way that it's super powerful is I had to fill out something, a questionnaire the other day, and I wrote out the response, and it didn't tell me in the response that there was a character limit. And I think it was like 150, 160 characters, whatever it was. And I was way over it. And I stuck it in there effectively and said, say this in 150 characters. And it
Hmm.
spit it out. And
Yeah.
I read over it and I was like, that's much more clear and concise than how I said it. And so I was able to answer the question with
Yeah.
that. So there's lots of really useful tools in this. And I am warming up to the idea, but I think I'm not the only one who has this knee jerk reaction of AI bad, get rid of it. And I understand the genie's out of the bottle. It's not going away, right?
But I also think that the knee jerk response of AI bad is comes from our media. It's
Yes,
a
absolutely.
media response. But I also think that we're talking about, it, you're using the vocabulary wrong. I don't think
Yes,
the
I
AI
agree.
that you're referring to is different. And I think I heard someone, the guy, a guest on Rogan a few weeks ago, who was the co-creator of Mosaic, the one of the first web browsers, was sort of talking about the idea that we don't. Lost my train of thought. Nope, it's gone. It's completely gone. I don't know.
Well, I
I
would
forgot where I
sum
was
it up
going.
like this. I think the people who have put this out did themselves a disservice by calling it generative AI. I think that may have been a bad branding decision because it's not AI. When we think AI, the first thing that pops into my head is the T-100, Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator, and
Right.
that is artificial intelligence. And
Right.
when I think of artificial intelligence, I think you're trying to make something that can think like I can. Data
Right.
and lore, right?
Hmm.
Data is really the only good one that I've known. Well, that's not fair. There's Alita Battle whatever.
Battle Angel.
Uh, Battle Angel. That was a good one. But the bulk of AI in media is fed to us as bad, right?
Right.
The same way
And
that the
so,
go ahead. The
and
same
what?
way
No,
that the
and what? Go ahead.
just gonna say the bulk of AI in media is fed to us as bad. The same way that the
Yes.
bulk of aliens in media is fed to us as bad. It's not all
Yeah.
bad, but the majority of it is. So that's our
And
general knee-jerk reaction.
that may be because we respond more to the fear of the that might just be more attractive to us in the entertainment side of things.
Well, I also think there's an
Um,
aspect of what do they call it when something looks human but it's not, and we want to smash it. Um,
well, that's the uncanny valley.
the uncanny valley. Well,
Yeah.
if you think most of the AI monsters are in humanoid form, so I think there's an
Mm,
uncanny valley
potentially.
aspect that kind of ties into that
Yeah.
a little
But
bit.
I was gonna say the other thing that the what I was trying to remember before is that he was saying that the argument didn't change. He said that what he was getting at is like we've been saying AI, we've been trying to come up with AI for 50 years, and they've been
Mhm.
saying AI is bad, it's going to kill us for 50 years. And this brand new technology came out, and they went, "There it is, see?" And he's like, "Wait a minute, it's a totally different technology. It's
Yeah.
like we didn't expect this to work as well as it did. How does it suddenly magically fit the box of evil AI that you want to
Mhm.
fit this into?"
And one of the things that I've read, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I've read or I've heard on the internet, because we all know everything on the internet is
Of
accurate,
course.
is that the people who built it don't really understand why it works or how it works, and
Yeah.
that bothers me a little bit, you know. But I don't know anything
I
about coding. That may be very common in coding.
I think
So
it was more that it's not that they don't understand how it works. They understand like the spotlight system and the way that it analyzes out the data. I think they didn't expect it to work at the scale that it worked.
ah, and
Like
that's
we were
fair.
they were hoping to get sentence responses, and they're like, we can write papers with this thing. Like, whoa, we didn't expect it to be able to scale out that. I
That
think.
quickly. And you know, sometimes invention hits a home run the first time out,
Yeah.
right? And maybe that's what this is. Maybe again, I don't know coding at all, so
Hmm.
I'm kind of speaking out of the side of my face here. But we need to understand what it is, and this brings me back to the political thing. If the people who are creating it are struggling with understanding how it works so well, why it works so well,
Hmm.
what all it's capable of, we don't need people who don't fundamentally understand what a password is or how to flip on a computer or why you
Yeah.
turn a router off and on again and it fixes things, passing laws based on this.
Yeah. We've all done tech support with our grandmothers before.
Yeah.
Like that person doesn't if I can't even imagine trying to explain. Well, let me give a different example. This is something that so a couple years ago, and this has happened multiple times in different tech industries, but this one always struck me. Apple announced that it was going to do a um sort of computer driven thing to check for child pornography and
Yes, I
and
remember that. Yes,
and
yes.
and and it was this really thing, and so I went, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I was like, how are they going to do that? And so I read through the paper, and it was like there's a program that it runs through where it like pulls down and it creates this little like 9 by, I think it's like 30 by 30 pixelated box that's from a certain corner of the screen, and they're able to compare it to a database of known images, and if it
Known illegal
matches
images. Yeah.
known illegal images, it matches that, then it goes to a second thing that checks it again, which goes to a live person who actually goes, that's not the same picture, and then it, and like it's this
Yeah.
whole big long thing, and then I watched the media respond to it, and I'm just sort of going like, wait, nobody understands what they're talking about. Everyone's screaming, oh my god, that they're looking at your pictures, and you're going, but that's not what they said.
Yeah, that's not what they said.
Like,
It's not what it's doing, and you're not reporting
right.
it accurately.
And you're not
And
reporting accurately, and now they don't do it because and so this amazing piece of technology that could have been very positive and helped people didn't happen because the people involved don't understand how it works.
absolutely, absolutely. I have the same argument with people who don't know a thing about guns and want to try and tell me how dangerous certain guns are. And we're not going to get into the gun control debate right now, but you see some idiot congressperson who's never fired a gun in their life, who just thinks guns are bad, who holds up an AR and says, this will blow a hole in the side of the house the size of your car. And I'm like, that's not what it does at all in any way, shape, or form. You have no concept of what you're talking about, right?
I remember hearing one where he was trying to say how, was it a 9, like it was a pistol and an automatic rifle that both fired the same bullet, and he was saying how the bullet being fired out of the rifle was more dangerous because it was faster or something. I was
There's
like,
actually there's some truth to that. So
oh, okay.
yeah, because
but it just sort of seemed like it was one of those like,
yeah,
we
increased
shouldn't
velocity.
allow these because
Yeah.
this is because this is it's
That's a more
the
logical
same
argument
thing but
because
different.
it gets into physics. It's like the same mass traveling faster is physically more dangerous.
I may have made it sound right. The way he said it sounded very
Biden
dumb.
said something about it, and it was not right. It was not right. But I know what you're. Again, the whole point of this isn't to get into the gun thing. We'll do that at some point. Is people who have no concept about how something functions trying to make laws and claims about how that thing functions doesn't make sense. And
Yeah.
this gets back.
And
Go ahead.
you could make the example on the medical side of things. I won't get into. I've heard stories of people saying that, like, we were looking at this law and trying to figure out why it was written that way, and so I reached out to the people who wrote the law, and the people who wrote the law told me to call the guy who works over at XYZ company, and he can explain it to me. And I'm like, wait a minute, you don't understand why the law is written this way? No, because we don't understand it. So you just let the dude who works at whatever company decide what and so again, it's all.
And this is a larger problem in politics. Is most of them are lawyers. Most of them have never worked a real law firm job. Most of them have been politicians their whole lives. Not all of them, but Biden's the perfect example. He never really contributed to society, and then he got in the Senate, and he stayed there for 50, 60 years, and then he worked at a university when he wasn't vice president, and actually never showed up and taught a damn class and took a paycheck home, and then now he's president. But he got paid as a professor, and so the man's never done anything in his life that wasn't politics.
Yeah.
And you may get the opinion that I don't like politicians, and you would be right. By and large, I think they're a bunch of crooked, slimy scum. Even the ones who go there with the best of intentions, I think, end up getting captured by the system. And I'll use AOC as an example there. And she's one I would trust more to write laws on this specific thing because at least she's of the generation using this kind of technology.
Yeah.
But she's caught a lot of flack for being captured by the Democrat machine. Whether that's true or not, we don't have to get into. But I'd rather see more people of AOC's generation and technical competence with technology move into the political arena to
Yeah.
write laws on this, or at least bring them in to help you write the law.
Well, and the problem is that they are bringing people in, but they're bringing in the Google guys and the Apple guys and the Facebook folks and the Twitter. Well, they don't like Twitter anymore, but
Yeah.
like they bring those people in. They have, because you always hear them talk about, and I forget where I heard this. Oh, it was that same guy talking about AI. He was Joe asked him why, have you ever gone and talked in to senators about this? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, well, is it public? He goes, oh, I don't go to that. That's just circus. The real conversations happen in the back rooms. And it was like, oh, okay. So, I mean, there are people having these conversations about this stuff, but it's not public. There, you've got people who've been paid, donations have been made, and and like, hey, we really need you to make sure that in the law the AI thing says this, because if you don't, then we won't be able to make money off of it.
Yeah,
like,
and we understand some people may not like this, but let's tie it to the just so it gets passed. Let's tie it to the funding starving children bill and infrastructure bill, and then they do this whole big conglomerate mess bill, and nobody has to take any accountability. But we've slightly gotten off topic.
Well, but I want to take it back to AI. I worry
okay.
that we're going to end up in a situation where, the companies are going to, or whatever, and they're going to try to say, you can't have an AI, or and then it's going to be something where it's like,
corporate can have an AI.
Yeah, or you can have an AI, but you can't have a private AI. You have to pay Facebook or Google or whatever to get
pay
one.
XYZ AI company to use their
AI.
Open AI is illegal, right?
Well, no, Open AI would be legal because it's not open. The Open AI let's just take a pause for a second.
Okay.
The company Open AI, that was partly founded by, I think, a $10 million injection by Elon at the beginning, was founded to be an open sourced AI. Well, that's why it's called Open AI. Well, at a certain point, they decided, no, we'd rather make money, and they stopped it being open. That's when Elon left. So
let me use a better analogy.
Would be still legal because you're paying a company.
Let me use a better analogy. An open source Linux nonprofit style AI where you don't have to pay anybody, and it's community developed and open
there is
source
one right now.
That I see being banned at some point.
Yes.
Because unlike Linux, you don't have to be like super computer savvy to make it work, right? You just download the app. And for those who don't know, Linux is an alternate operating system for PCs. That you kind of have to be fairly
I just did a quick search. There are currently 10 different open source GPTs. The one that I'm familiar with is GPT for All.
Okay.
But there are 10 of them that are already out there open. I'm sure there's more. And you run them on your machine. You do what you're going to do with them. But like, and so I want to cover something else because we're getting to the end here. That a big thing that I'm going to be interested to see where this goes is with the data.
Yes.
Because we've been fighting about data since Napster. I mean, Napster sort of opened the door for data wants to be free.
Yes.
It's too easy for data. I mean, we talked about it in an earlier episode about torrents and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Like, everything is out there. And again, like I was saying, I can go and grab all the episodes of a TV show. I can rip them onto my computer. I can load them into my GPT. I can say, hey, make me more episodes of this show. Like, we're not there yet, but I think we're going to reach a point there.
Yeah, we're headed that way. We're definitely headed that way.
At that point, like, where do we go at that point? Like, it's going to be interesting because, like, if I can load anything into my system and have it output new content, why would I ever? So
the question becomes:
Post Malone talked about it on Rogan the other day. I saw it on YouTube because I don't really care about him. He was saying because Joe and him were talking about it, and Joe was saying, I think people are gonna want to listen to the song that they know that you wrote. And Post Malone's response was, yes, but if it sounds right, which he was like, a lot of them sound really good. If it sounds right, and you could go in and say, I need a new Post Malone song that sounds like this, that's about a breakup. This is my name. This is her name. This is how she broke up with me, and it builds you a song that is your experience. Custom music. I mean,
Yeah,
it's interesting.
it is interesting. And I think the question is going to be, is the quality going to be there in the product that's put out? And will people pay to consume it? Because at the end of the day, if this costs big business money, it's going to get shot down and they're going to clamp down on it.
Well,
There,
I would argue with that, though, that torrenting didn't stop.
no, it didn't. It didn't stop, but people are still willing to pay to go see the stuff. And things are changing. Like torrent, you're right. Torrenting didn't stop, so they came up with streaming as a counter, and a lot of people went, "Well, it's a lot easier for me to pay like $10 a month and just stream the
Right.
stuff." Right? So I don't know where we're headed, but
So maybe what it'll be is that the artist will own the GPT. And so
uh,
I can send a request to Post Malone's GPT and say, write me a song, and then I pay $5 for that song.
so I'm going to make a different type of statement and frame this a different way. I don't feel that the GPT generative AI thing has any real soul. So I think it can make adequate derivative content. I think the powerful emotional content is going to still come from that spark of human soul inspiration. And I think that
Yes.
will somehow continue to drive creative art.
I think
I don't
that
know where the balance is going to be.
the new script writer will essentially be a prompt writer. And so what it's going to be is it's going to be a series of, like, I want an action story, like I want a sequel to Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I want, Brad Pitt's character to have gained some weight and now he's not as interested, and then, like, and you could be real broad with it and then have it output a script that gives you that spark of, and then that's where it gets into, like, how far were we getting with, because I mean, you look at Unreal Engine 5 and how well, I mean, that thing is adaptive on the fly. You've got things like the Volume, where they're shooting with, I mean, imagine if
Mhm.
you could, I mean, all you need is two actors and everything. I mean, that's what that
Well,
whole,
and that's again, that's part of
yeah,
why we're seeing the strike happen right now. And it's like for extras, they wanted to pay them like $200 for a day and then be able to use their image forever in anything.
forever.
It's like,
Yeah.
eh,
And so
so
I
I don't
think
know
the
where we're
model,
headed. No, go ahead, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think where what's going to be interesting is where it breaks, because I think we're definitely going to end up with, you can't make money with this stuff. You can't load all the stuff in and make a bunch of episodes of X-Men and then put them on YouTube and make a bunch of money. It's going to be copyright issues all over the place.
Yes,
It's going to get
yes.
taken down. But I wonder if we're going to start getting into this idea of single serving content to copy Chuck Palahniuk. I mean, like,
And maybe it will parallel. Now, this is the other
mm,
thing that we haven't really talked about at all in any of our conversations. Maybe this will parallel, and we will still have paid for created art from artists, whether that's music or movies or whatever, and we will see the rise, the resurrection of like the fan film, right? And so these
mm,
things that are out there and put out there, and I think back to what I think is the greatest Batman fan film ever made, which is the Grayson trailer. Which, if you've
mm,
never watched it, go find it. There's a poster on Daniel's wall from it on the one you can't see. It is beautiful. I've read the man's script, and see, that's the thing. That was art. That had a soul in it, and I don't
Yeah, but
think
now
AI could spit that out that good.
but I don't disagree with you. But now imagine if I could feed that script into an AI and have it make me a movie.
Yeah,
Imagine if it could
an
out
animated version of that movie.
with
Yes.
Adam West and I mean, like that's and see, I think that's where it's going to get interesting because I've
And I'll tell
heard
you how
like
what I would do if that's out
Mhm.
there and I could do it. I would take Stormfront and drop it in there and go make James Marsters, who's read all the books,
Yeah,
voice the characters and
yeah,
make me a Dresden animated series.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
for
You could
me,
do it,
for me. And at
right?
some point, it might be able to do it. Now, the problem comes when people try to make money off that. And that's where the copyright stuff gets in. And I think that's something that really needs to be addressed. Going back to what we talked about in the beginning, where
Yeah,
we've already seen authors' forgeries happening.
yeah,
Um, and so we need protections for that. We also need art to be art and be creative. And I don't know where the answer is to that. I don't know how much this is the new tool versus the human interaction, right?
right,
Because let's be honest, people said cinema would destroy plays, and there's
right.
still theater, right?
Yeah,
Um,
and see,
and
I think we're gonna see. I think it's going to make. There's going to be so you were just saying cinema's going to kill the play, TV's going to kill the theater, streaming's going to kill the next thing, the theater. You know, like works all the way down, and each one becomes derivative, has offshoots, but there's old stuff. I think you're right. I think what you will we're definitely going to start seeing is once it gets to the point, because right now if you look at the where people shoot real video and then have the GPT like animate over the top of it, it's not quite consistent yet. But imagine when you get to the point where you can make it be consistent.
yeah,
And then you can just shoot your movie or shoot your scenes and then go replace this character with Wolverine and replace this person with, with Omega Red. And then you can have two guys do the fight scene totally
they're
and then
already kind
just
of doing that
replace
with
them.
green screen and stuff and
But I mean, I'm
CGI.
talking about like at home
Yeah, no, no,
that
no. Yeah, you've
I think,
taken the professional level product and now made it a consumer level app,
right.
right?
Just
Like,
like it was when kids got
um,
their hands on iPhones for the first time, they didn't, and they could start editing on their phones, and it really unlocked. This is going to be
or
the next
when
step.
Apple released iMovie back in the day, the original one, and
Yeah,
all of a sudden, all you needed was a video camera, and you could edit your because back in the day it was iMovie, FireWire camera, and iDVD, and you could make your own movies and
right.
produce them and sell them
Well,
and,
and then
get them out there.
I mean, I remember when Apple announced that it was going to have the camera shot video, and you could edit it on the phone, and
On the
I
phone.
remember them like having it was like
Yeah.
movie production in your pocket, and you're like, oh,
And now we're
that's
global
crazy.
to like smartphone. Any high-end smartphone right now has
Hmm.
a video editor, a cinema quality camera, and you can upload to a free streaming service like YouTube, and you can make your own content. I
And
mean,
then imagine you add a generative AI on top of
yeah.
that. You can shoot videos, change who. I mean, because imagine what that's going to do to YouTube and TikTok. You shoot a video of your friend, and you're like, now replace that person dancing with, the frog from Looney Tunes.
I
And
mean,
then like
I think about
it's
what it could
just
do for our
limitless.
podcast. If we're
Hmm.
if we're talking about something like this, and then you go back to edit the because Daniel's our editor, you go back and edit it and go, all right here, cut in a video of this topic they're talking about, cut
Well,
in a picture of
speaking,
this book, you know, and it just starts overlaying it, and it's like the thing pops up and it does that, and now we don't have to have someone who knows how to go in and like do a professional video app and find the stuff and
yeah.
do all that work.
Well, I'll talk about Riverside here for a second, which is what we use to record. It actually has introduced AI into its backend system. So it will automatically give me a transcript of everything that we've said. So you can go through and do like a word search and a transcript.
Mhm.
But it now will auto clip the episode. So reads the transcript and goes, oh, that's a good 3 minute clip. That's a good 30-second clip. That's a good, and it will clip it out for you as well. Then you go in and you're like, oh, yeah, we'll just take this little piece out. And it makes all that easier. And again, it's just AI in its different forms is going to be incredibly helpful. Writing emails, doing transcripts. I mean, that used to be a job. Like people
Yeah.
used to have a job where they would listen and type stuff out. Like AI can just do it now.
I mean, I see it. The more I look at it, as long as we protect people's ability to profit off their own intellectual property, which is one of my
Yes.
big hangups. I see it as being the next massive evolution of the spell check.
Yeah.
Right? It's the next logical step in assistive tools, which I think is going to be. I'm coming around to it. I didn't want anything to do with it when it first came out, and you were playing. I remember we had conversation for months about it, and I was just like, no, 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 no. And then I did it, and I was like, oh, this is kind of silly. And I was like, make me a D&D character. I was like, I love you now,
Yes.
because I'm a forever GM. I'm always having to do that stuff. Um, and a tool that can do that kind of thing on the fly is just really useful.
I
And
mean,
as long as we
you could.
structure it safely,
Mhm.
right? Because, and I'll give you an example of what I mean by safely. As long as my 14-year-old can't download a chat GPT and say, write me erotic fiction pornography. And I, as a parent, have a way to go in and put a block in there, like Androids and iPhones have kid safety stuff. As long as those kind of things are put in there, I think that these tools are going to be good. But I think there are some real questions we need to ask because, once again, technology is coming way faster than the law is handling it.
Always.
Yeah, but it's really fast with this. It feels like 6 months ago this wasn't a thing, and now it's a thing, and now it's like
Yes.
here. So the
You're not incorrect.
speed at which ChatGPT and all of those generative AIs have come has blown me away, and I've grown up with all this.
Yeah. Well, they tipped over the mountaintop. It's been a long trudge all the way up here,
We just haven't seen
and
it.
they
Yeah.
and they tipped over, and it was just like, and then all of a sudden the floodgates opened, and
It's as world changing to me as Maxim, the German engineer Maxim, spending 20 years inventing the machine gun, and then he sells it, and then we had World War One, and we had that horrific war because
yeah,
we went from single shot or like slow to reload to real machine gun, and
yeah.
and no one adapted, and that technology killed millions. Now I don't think AI is going to kill people,
I was
but I see it as that disruptive.
I was gonna compare it to the iPhone.
I think
Um,
it's more disruptive than the iPhone.
I mean, I just look at how disruptive the iPhone has been of like, Arab Spring and the BLM, and that
Yeah,
it
but
has
to me, those are small scale things.
but this it fundamentally the iPhone fundamentally changed the way that people communicate and live their
Yes,
lives.
yes, it did. You're right. You're right.
Because you tell me when people use how many people used to photograph their food when you were growing up.
Yeah, no.
Like so
Um,
there has been a dynamic
yes, you're
shift.
right. You're right. I just see this being,
Bigger.
which is why I compared it to the machine gun, because the machine gun fundamentally changed in a violently and
Yeah.
drastic way. And I think ChatGPT has the potential to do this. And I'll give you an example. ChatGPT, some super scummy person could be like, "Give me what I need to sound like a good person," or
Mm-hmm.
there was a video years ago that I don't remember if it was on YouTube or where I saw it, where let's say you get somebody's personal data you download their entire Facebook profile,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, write me everything I need to seduce this person. And it gives you the whole formula, right?
I
And the
remember that
video that
being
I'm
a
remembering is like the guy had like the contact lenses in, and he was like accessing her Facebook profile and all this stuff until she figured it out. So I see the potential for abuse, and I worry
that
about it.
was the video that they used to scare everybody from starting Google Chrome from the Google
Google
glasses.
Glasses, okay. That
That was
feels
the
right. That feels time wise about
that
right.
was the
Yeah,
the fear-mongery video that came out that made everybody not want those to happen, and it really hurt them, I think, because people
I
were like,
agree. I
look at
agree.
what this could do, and it couldn't even come close to doing
No, it
any
couldn't.
of the things that they said that it could. But
Um,
I definitely think there with every tool, including the internet, there
Absolutely.
is there is room for abuse, and I think that
Yeah.
all this is in a great way, in a broad sense, is a large data aggregation system, and I think as long as we
Yes.
use it that way, I think we're going to be
Yeah.
all right. Let's don't just don't let it write the bus routes for Kentucky. Did you hear about that?
Yeah. No, I did. It was
Ugh.
horrifying. And I think it's interesting because of our life experiences and perspectives. Between your life and the things you've experienced and the way you were raised versus mine, I tend to come at things from an absolute worst case abused scenario. And you tend to see the better, more positive aspects of things, which is one of the reasons I like talking to you about all this stuff. Not to say you haven't had hardship in your life, but I mean, you know where I'm coming from with this. It
Mm.
was it was a combination of how I was raised, the influences, and life experience. I always look for the worst case scenario and plan for that, and hope
Hmm.
for the best. Right? I'm not a doomsdayer, more or less. And you just have a much more overall positive attitude when we
Yeah.
come to these kind of things, which is why I like discussing them with you. The cool thing is, I think we agree. This is going to be a powerful technology. It's here. It's going to be helpful, but we need to protect people's intellectual property and their ability to make a living off of that stuff.
Yeah. And I think the key is you can't. I mean, it's so weird because you get into derivative work
Mhm.
and how that works, and I really think that it's gonna come down, and I've said this like 4 times now. It's gonna come down to the companies aren't gonna be able to use other people's data in their chat GPT to make money. So let me give you an example. A company could use a generic GPT system that's probably got access to, Wikipedia and, information that it needs to understand how to communicate and all that kind of basic stuff. And then a company could load their entire technical knowledge base for, like, let's say like Hewlett Packard could load all the information it needs for every printer that's ever made into this one database and then make it their chat bot, and when people chat in, it knows it's got all the information. But I don't think you're going to be able to do it the other way where, like, or you'll be able to do it where, like, Disney could make the Disney GPT that
Yeah.
does everything and does all that stuff, but that you know Warner Brothers couldn't do that. They'd have to only use their material, and that what you're going to end up with is the personal AIs that people will have, or like, you know, dark web AIs that'll have all that stuff, or you'll be able to get, weird, derivative work outputs. So I don't know.
So I'm going to throw a question, or I'm going to throw a request out there to the questions community. Um, if you know how this technology works, or you're much more versed in it, or you're a copyright lawyer, or you know someone who works in copyright law and deals with this, reach out to us. We would love to bring you on to talk about this a little bit more.
Yeah.
Daniel and I don't know a copyright lawyer. We don't know anybody who works in copyright law. We don't know anybody that we can talk to who works in building AIs. But if you know anyone out there, send them the podcast and then go ahead and reach out to us. Our email is going to be in the link below. Please, give us a review. Do the like and the subscribe thing on YouTube. All the things I hate these in podcasts, so I'm just saying them because people have to say them. Look for the Patreons and all that stuff. But the big ask is if you know anything about this, or you know someone who would be willing to talk to us about this, put them in contact with us. We'd love to talk to somebody who
let
knows
us know.
about it.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time.